and welcome to this word processing video looking at modifying the size of your table as well as manipulating text. We're going to start off by looking at different mouse shapes. You'll find as you move your mouse over a table that different shapes appear that you don't normally see in a Word document. If your mouse is near the top of the first row, it can turn into a black down pointing arrow, which when clicked will select the entire column. I can also click and drag that arrow to highlight more than one column. Another black arrow shape appears when your mouse is in the lower left corner of a cell. So as you can see, I'm just between the grid line and the text, and when I single click, I'm now able to choose that single cell. By dragging, I can also highlight more than one cell in a row or a column. Choosing a row is slightly different in that we work with a mouse we're familiar with. If you slide the mouse into the left margin area, it turns into a white slanted arrow, and when I single click that, the entire row is highlighted. If you like using your right mouse button, highlighting rows and columns and cells first can speed up the processes a little bit. If you want to just do a basic change, add rows, add columns, the only thing we have to worry about is the position of the insertion point. It needs to be where you want the new row or column to go. Now we have some buttons in the rows and columns section of the table ribbon that make this unbelievably simple. If I'm in the first row, I would either click on Insert Above to add a row on top or Insert Below to add one underneath. If I highlight a couple of rows, okay, this is where you and your mouse are having fun. If I choose Insert Above or Insert Below, 2 rows will be added in that location. So the more you select, the more will be added to your table. To add columns, much the same thing. If I click in the center of a column or any column and choose Insert Left or Right, one column will then be added on the side I've indicated. Depending on the mood your computer is in, Word will either resize the existing columns to make room for the new columns so they're all the same width, or if you've used the auto fit option as an example, your new column may have a different size than the other columns, and we will take a look at adjusting column width shortly. So we have our 4 buttons at the top, make it pretty foolproof to add these 2 elements to the table. I would be remiss though if I didn't mention the tab key. Now those of you who've worked with tables know that when you press tab in a row, the insertion point moves to the next cell automatically. When you're in the last cell of a table though, and you press the tab key, it will automatically add a new row to the bottom of your table. So you don't have to worry about taking your hand off the keyboard if you're adding a lot of data in to add those new rows. It's simply a type and tab process. I'm just going to add a column or title here. Time. Okay, so I'm using the down arrow. I very much believe in using tab wherever possible, but down arrow, because my rows are fairly short, just makes it faster to get that text typed in. If you had columns or rows to delete, the process would be very much the same. If it's a row, I can simply single click or highlight multiple rows. There is a delete button that I could use to then delete the individual cell I'm in, or the column, row, or the entire table for that matter. Watch if you're deleting cells. Strange things can sometimes happen to the other cells, the other columns, if you just take the one cell out. So I'm just going to choose delete row. Job is all done. Now, of course, there has to be another way of adding rows and columns to your document, just because Microsoft loves to give us variety. This second technique involves using the mouse. So if I were to position my mouse between the branch and time column and just gradually move it above the table, you'll see it's turned into a blue double line with a plus sign in a circle. When I click on that plus sign, a column is added between the two columns my mouse was sitting on. Same thing will happen with a row. If I move my mouse to the left edge, so I'm between email and word processing, when I single click that plus sign, a new row is inserted between those rows. I'm just going to delete the new row I've put in. Once you've got the required columns and rows set up in your table, it's then time to start playing with the appearance of these elements. Columns, for most of us, will be an equal width when we create the table. And while you want to have some white space between the text and the grid lines that you may be printing, having too much just makes the table look kind of empty. One method of changing column widths is to use the mouse. And as you can see, I have my mouse positioned on the grid line between the time and location columns. By dragging to the left, I can make the time column smaller, but you'll notice at the same time, the right column, the location column, is getting wider. So using this mouse method simply transfers the space between the two columns on both sides of the mouse. If I wanted to adjust one column only, then I could use the spin buttons in the cell size section. So I want this column to be wide enough so that word processing 1 will fit on a single line. It doesn't wrap. So I'm just going to continue using that spin button until I have the required width and a little white space in there. None of the other columns were affected by that change. So using the spin button does give us the advantage of controlling the exact size of the column, as well as just changing one column in a table. I'm just going to add some data here so we can start looking at row changes. As you can guess, working with rows and changing the size has the same two options as working with columns. If I want to guesstimate the size of a row, I would simply put my mouse on the bottom grid line. So I'm just moving to increase the size of my titles row by clicking and dragging that down. Come on. There we go. I'm able then to make the row as wide as I want. For a specific size, I would use the height spin buttons in the cell size section. With older versions of Word, and I'm looking at 2010-ish, if you fix the row height too small, you would have found that text that wrapped within that row didn't all show up. It doesn't seem to be an issue with newer versions, but if you're having a moment where you know you've typed something in a row and you can't see it, the first change you want to make would be to the row height. Once we've got the setup of the columns and rows done, we can then go ahead and look at moving and copying columns and rows. The same 4 steps are used to move items in a table. We highlight the text, cut it, reposition the insertion point, and then paste. So when you're moving a column, it will always be pasted to the left or before the column your insertion point is in. So what I want to do is move the branch column before the workshop column. So I'll do this as a cut and paste, and then we'll look at our mouse alternative. So I'm going to choose branch. I'm going to work with the Control-X shortcut key to select cut. I'm clicking at the beginning of the first column and shortcut to paste that column in. So now I'm back to columnar width time, which is always lots of fun. Pretty straightforward. Let's do the same idea. I want to move the location column after the branch column, but this time I'll do it as a drag and drop. So again, I've got to make sure I'm selecting the entire column. If you highlight just cells in a column, only those cells will be moved. So my selection is made. I'm now going to click and drag the mouse, and as you can see, it turns into the normal drag and drop mouse shape. By moving my insertion point in front of W, when I release the mouse, the text is dropped in front or before that column. So again, let's do the column width thing. I wish there was a way of predicting when column widths wouldn't change, but Word keeps you on your toes. Working with rows, same principle. I select the entire row and can either cut and paste or copy and paste. So let's just take this West Caledonia row, and it's selected. I'll just do a drag and drop. Very simple. I'll position it in front of the second row. When I release the mouse, it's dropped on top of that row. I'm just going to undo that change. Copying will let you duplicate information. And because this row is highlighted, what I'm going to do is copy it to the top so that I can add another workshop in. Now, I could do the regular copy and paste buttons or shortcut keys. I don't do a lot of right-clicking for copy and cutting, but that would work as well. I'm just going to do a drag and drop because you can, by clicking and dragging your right mouse button, select the copy command. Normally, if you left click and drag, it's just a move, but by right clicking and dragging, when I release my mouse, a pop-up menu appears where I would select move or copy. So I'm just going to do a copy, change some text, and I'm done. So it does make it much easier if you have to repeat information. You can just duplicate what you have rather than have to retype everything. Columns would work the same way. I can highlight a column. Okay, right click and drag it and select either move or copy. And column width time again. So there you have the key elements to changing your table structure. We know we can adjust the row height, the column width, add rows and columns, as well as move and copy data. It's just a matter of finding whatever method or technique you like using the best. Thanks for taking time to watch this video, and happy word processing.